The Pe-8, the Soviet flying fortress that shocked the world. Picture this. It's the late 1930s, and the world is on the brink of a massive war. Air power is becoming the name of the game, and nations are racing to build the ultimate bomber. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, a country still shaking off its agricultural roots and dealing with a shaky economy, decides to go big. They create the Pe-8, a strategic bomber that could go toe-to-toe with anything the West had. This isn't just a story about a plane. It's about ambition, ingenuity, and defying the odds. Buckle up as we explore the rise of the Pe-8, its triumphs, its struggles, and why it deserves a spot in the history books. The Pe-8, originally called the ANT-42, wasn't just a machine. It was a bold middle finger to anyone who doubted the Soviets could compete with global superpowers like the US or Germany. Let's break down how this beast came to life and why it still matters today. Back in 1931, the Soviets were flying the TB-3, a clunky bomber nicknamed the Flying Barn because of its outdated design and imported BMW engines. It was functional but hardly cutting edge. Fast forward just 5 years to 1936, and Soviet engineers, led by the legendary Andrei Tupolev, unveiled the Pe-8 prototype. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a quantum leap. Why does this matter? In the 1930s, aviation was evolving at lightning speed. The US was working on its iconic B-17 Flying Fortress. Germany was tinkering with the FW-200, and Britain was developing its own heavy hitters. The Soviet Union, despite economic hardships and a lack of advanced tech, decided to not just keep up but aim higher. The Pe-8 was their answer, a bomber that could fly faster, higher, and farther than most of its rivals. With a top speed of 280 miles per hour, a ceiling of 36,000 feet, and heavy defensive weapons, it was a force to be reckoned with. The Pe-8's creation wasn't all smooth sailing. The late 1930s were a dark time in the USSR, marked by Stalin's brutal purges. In 1937, key designers like Andrei Tupolev, Vladimir Petlyakov, and Vladimir Myashev were arrested, labeled as saboteurs, and thrown into secret prison labs called sharashkas. Imagine being a world-class engineer, forced to design a game-changing plane while locked up under the watchful eye of the secret police. That's the reality these guys faced. For Vladimir Petlyakov, the Pe-8 was a lifeline. His work on the project was so impressive that he was rehabilitated, and in 1942, the plane was renamed the Pe-8 in his honor. This was a rare win in a system that crushed so many. But the road to success was paved with challenges. The Pe-8 was a masterpiece, but its engines were its Achilles heel. The Soviet Union struggled to produce reliable, high-performance aviation engines in the 1930s. The Pe-8 needed motors that could handle extreme altitudes, up to 36,000 feet, where the air is thin and conditions are brutal. The first engines, the AM-35A, were 4 V12 liquid-cooled beasts, each pumping out 1,200 horsepower. Sound impressive, right? Well, not so fast. These engines were a nightmare. At high altitudes, they leaked oil like a sieve, and their lifespan was a measly 100 hours. A beefier version with a 150-hour lifespan weighed an extra 40 to 50 pounds. Not ideal for a plane carrying tons of bombs. The Soviets tried switching to diesel M40 engines, which boosted the range from 2,200 miles to 3,400 miles. Fun fact, these engines later powered a famous Soviet ship, the Zarya, in the 1960s. But production issues plagued the diesels, so the Pe-8 eventually switched to M82 engines, pushing the range to 3,600 miles. Still, reliability remained a constant headache. It's like building a Ferrari that stalls at every stoplight. How did the Pe-8 stack up against its rivals? Let's talk about the American B-17, the flying fortress that became a legend. The Pe-8 It actually had a few tricks up its sleeve. Its 36,000-foot ceiling made it untouchable for most enemy fighters, like the German Me-109, which struggled at those heights. Armed with 20mm cannons and 12.7mm machine guns, the Pe-8 was a floating arsenal. And get this, it could carry 5-ton bombs, something no other plane in the world could do at the time. Aviation historian John W.R. Taylor noted, at 26,000 to 30,000 feet, the Pe-8's speed outpaced German fighters like the Me-109 and He-112. Professor Leonid Kerber went further, saying the TB-7's early name was the most powerful bomber in the world. Untouchable by anti-aircraft guns or fighters at its max altitude, it outclassed the American B-17. High praise, but there was a catch. German 88mm anti-aircraft guns, which littered Europe, were a real threat, and those pesky engines kept the Pe-8 from reaching its full potential. One of the Pe-8's most epic moments came early in World War II. In 1941, as Nazi Germany invaded the USSR, Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring boasted that Soviet air forces were crushed and Berlin was untouchable. Soviet pilots begged to differ. First, they sent DB-3 bombers to hit Berlin, but then the Pe-8 stepped up. Over 88 sorties were flown, dropping 21 tons of bombs and sparking 32 fires in the German capital. The Nazis were stunned. They initially thought the British were behind it. Soon, letters from Berliners to German soldiers on the Eastern Front revealed the truth. The Soviets were hitting back hard. These raids weren't just about destruction. They were a psychological gut punch, showing the world that the USSR wasn't down for the count. The Pe-8 became a symbol of defiance. The Pe-8 wasn't just a war machine. It was a diplomatic powerhouse. In 1942, it carried Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov and his delegation to Britain and the United States. This wasn't a leisurely trip. Flying at 26,000 feet, the Pe-8 dodged German anti-aircraft fire, which couldn't reach its altitude. The crew had to check every 15 minutes to ensure no one passed out. Oxygen masks slipping off at that height meant certain death. The transatlantic flight wowed British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt. FDR, in particular, was blown away by the Soviets' ability to pull off such a daring mission. This wasn't just a technical feat, it was a diplomatic coup. Molotov secured Allied support without begging, and the Pe-8 proved the USSR was a serious player on the global stage. By 1944, the Pe-8 played a key role in forcing Finland to sue for peace, dropping massive bombs on Helsinki. But as the war progressed, newer Allied bombers began to outshine it. The USSR shifted focus to fighters and tactical bombers, which were more critical for the front lines. By the war's end, the Pe-8 was showing its age. Still, it soldiered on. Some Pe-8s served into the late 1950s, hauling cargo and supporting Arctic expeditions. That's a heck of a run for a plane built under such tough conditions. Its longevity speaks to the brilliance of its design, even if it never got the reliable engines it deserved. To grasp how incredible the Pe-8 was, let's look at the Soviet economy in the 1930s. The USSR was reeling from forced industrialization and collectivization. Resources were scarce, skilled workers were few, and advanced tech was hard to come by. Producing cutting-edge engines was a massive challenge. Compare that to the US, where companies like Boeing had deep pockets and a stable economy to back projects like the B-17. Historical data shows the USSR spent about 25% of its GDP on defense in the 1930s, an insane figure for a country still building its industrial base. Each Pe-8 cost roughly 1.5 to 2 million rubles, equivalent to tens of millions of dollars today. Why go all in on such an expensive project? Because strategic bombers were a status symbol. They screamed, "We're not just a backwater nation, we're a global power." The Pe-8 was the USSR's way of flexing its muscles. The Pe-8 is more than a footnote in aviation history. It's a testament to what humans can achieve against all odds. Despite unreliable engines, political repression, and economic hardship, Soviet engineers and pilots pulled off a miracle. The Pe-8 flew higher, faster, and farther than many of its peers. It bombed Berlin, carried diplomats across oceans, and made enemies rethink their assumptions. For Americans, this story is a reminder that innovation isn't exclusive to the West. The Pe-8 challenged the B-17's dominance and showed that even an underdog can steal the spotlight. It's a tale of grit, brains, and sheer determination. What do we learn from the Pe-8? First, never underestimate the power of ambition. The Soviets dreamed big and made it happen. Second, innovation thrives under pressure. The Pe-8's creators worked in impossible conditions, yet they delivered. Finally, resilience matters. The pilots who flew the Pe-8 faced death with every mission, but they kept going. In today's world of drones, stealth jets, and AI, the Pe-8 reminds us that behind every machine are people who dare to push the limits. Whether you're an engineer, a dreamer, or just someone who loves a good story, the Pe-8's legacy is a call to aim high. The Pe-8's story is a wild ride of triumph, struggle, and sheer audacity. It's proof that even in the darkest times, human ingenuity can shine. I hope this tale fired you up as much as it does me. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. Tell me what you think of the Pe-8 or what other epic stories you want to hear. Let's keep exploring history's hidden gems together.